Ohio winters don't play around. The wind bites, the snow stings, and that evening, the storm outside was going full throttle against our windows like it was mad at the house itself. I was curled up in my tiny bedroom, buried under 2 blankets, highlighting a section in my behavioral psych textbook when Mom's voice echoed from the kitchen. "Riley, dinner's ready!" I sighed, tossed my pen aside, and marked my page. That was the 4th time I'd read the same sentence. Lately, it was harder to focus. My mind kept drifting to things I didn't want to think about. As I stepped into the dining room, I was greeted by the same daily snapshot. My dad, Hugh, reading the paper like it was still 1995, and Mom Karen, yes, her real name ironic, I know, plating pasta like everything was perfectly normal. "Normal? What took you so long?" Mom asked, forcing a smile. "We don't want the food to get cold." I sat down, my fork barely scraping the edge of the plate. "Where's Maddie?" "Oh, she's out shopping." "She'll be back soon," Mom said, almost proudly. My sister Madison Maddie, to everyone else, was the sun around which our household revolved. Supposedly, she was studying for dental school, but it was mostly brunch dates, salon visits, and Instagram stories with hashtags like #grindmode. "Did you have classes today?" Dad asked, flipping a page without looking at me. "Yeah," I replied quietly. "There was a guest lecture on childhood trauma and neuroplasticity. Dr. Weber invited me to help with." The front door banged open. "Oh my God, guys, guess what?" Speak of the devil. Maddie strolled in, designer bag on her shoulder, grinning like she just won the lottery. Bags dangled from both hands, definitely not Dollar Tree. "Look what I got," she said, spinning toward us like we were her personal runway audience. It was on mega sale, and I had to snag it. And get this, people are making tens of thousands a month, posting storytime videos on YouTube. Like Reddit stories, no voice, no face, just text and subtitles. Mom clapped like Maddie just cured cancer. "It suits you perfectly, sweetheart." Dad finally glanced up. "If our Maddie's happy, we're all happy." Meanwhile, I chewed quietly. The bag she just snagged on sale probably cost more than I earned in 3 weekends at the diner. I worked there to pay for textbooks and groceries. My dream was to become a licensed trauma therapist. But with barely any support, I was surviving on scholarships, caffeine, and hope. "When does your semester end?" Mom suddenly asked, turning to me. "In a few months. Then I'll apply for the clinical psych masters. Still? Riley, don't you think it's time to move out and be a little more independent?" My stomach twisted. "I'm living here to save money. I can't afford rent and tuition," I said, choosing my words carefully. "She's single because she's always in books," Maddie teased. "I'd die if I had to live like that." I didn't respond. What could I say that didn't sound bitter? Later that night, I escaped to my room, trying to refocus on my coursework. A soft buzz came from my phone, Grandpa Leo. "Hey, kiddo. Just checking in. How's the semester going?" I smiled. Grandpa Leo was the only one who ever really listened. After Grandma passed, he moved to a quiet coastal town in Florida. He'd run a property company back in the day and had a retirement account that probably had more zeros than I could imagine. I texted him back, "Hanging in there. I'll call you soon, promise." But the truth was, I wasn't hanging in, not really. The next morning, I dragged myself to campus. The university library was my sanctuary. It smelled like old paper and ambition. By the time my last class ended, I had completely zoned out the weather report, which was a mistake. Flurries had turned into full-on blizzard mode. "Riley." I turned to see Dr. Weber jogging to catch up with me. She was our department's powerhouse tough, brilliant, and one of the few who believed in me. "I read your latest paper on PTSD resilience. Phenomenal work," she said. "I've been thinking, would you consider joining our trauma research team? It could help shape your grad school track." I blinked. "Yes, absolutely. That would be amazing. Great. Let's talk details soon." I left campus floating on hope until I got home. There was a car parked out front that I didn't recognize. Inside, my parents and Maddie were seated in the living room, a pile of papers on the table. Something felt off. "Sit down," Mom said, her tone oddly formal. "What's going on?" "We have news," Dad began. "Maddie got accepted into dental school." I looked at her. She was glowing like a Christmas tree. "Wow, congrats," I said sincerely. "But there's an issue," Mom cut in. "The tuition is." higher than expected. Dad slid a document across the table. My jaw dropped at the numbers. "We've been saving for this, but we'll need more," he said, eyes on the paper. "If there's anything I can do." I started. "There is," Mom said. "We need you to pause school, get a job, help cover the costs." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. "You're serious?" My voice cracked. "Maddie becoming a dentist will benefit the whole family," Dad explained. "And psychology?" Maddie scoffed. "It's not like therapists make bank." "That's not fair," I said quietly, my throat tightening. "You can go back later," Mom added. "But right now, the family needs to prioritize Maddie's future." They wanted me to give up my future for hers. I stared at them, at the absurdity of it all. I had fought tooth and nail for every inch of progress. Every paper, every shift at the diner, every sleepless night. And now they were asking me to throw it all away. "For what?" I whispered. "So Maddie can buy more handbags?" Mom didn't answer. Dad didn't blink. And Maddie smirked. I went to bed that night in a fog of disbelief. I didn't sleep, couldn't. My life, my dreams were being handed over like spare change. And the worst part, I didn't even know the full betrayal yet. But it was coming. Hard. I didn't leave my room the next morning. The world outside was covered in snow, but it was warm in my chest for all the wrong reasons. Anger, disbelief, and betrayal tangled together in a storm louder than the one outside. They really meant it. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, dreading what came next. But by 10 a.m., I was walking across campus with a manila envelope in hand. Inside it, my withdrawal form, just one signature away from quitting something I'd poured my heart into. I kept telling myself it was temporary, just a break. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I waited outside the admin office, heart pounding. When it was my turn, I stepped in and handed over the envelope. Janet, the office manager, squinted at the form. "You sure about this, Riley? You're one of our top students." I swallowed. "Family stuff. I don't have much choice." Her eyes softened. "If anything changes, don't hesitate to come back. Doors don't always close forever." I nodded. But it sure felt like this one had just slammed shut. As I left the building, I saw Dr. Weber outside chatting with a colleague. She caught sight of me and waved, her smile fading the moment she saw my face. She walked over quickly. "Hey, you okay? You look wrecked." My voice caught. I had to withdraw. "What?" she said, stunned. "Why?" I told her everything. Not every detail, but enough. She didn't say anything right away. Then she pulled out her business card and pressed it into my hand. "If you ever need anything guidance, a letter of recommendation, even just someone to talk to you, call me." "You hear me?" "Yeah," I whispered, gripping the card like it was the last piece of my old life. The walk home felt longer than usual, every step heavier than the one before. At dinner that night, nobody mentioned the withdrawal. It was like my education had never mattered to begin with. Instead, Maddie was going on about her orientation schedule, possible apartments near campus, and which friends would help her move. And Riley, Mom said between bites of roast chicken, "You start your job at Parkside Grocery on Thursday, right?" "Yeah," I muttered. "Thursday, great. It's good. You're finally doing something practical." That word practical burned in my ears. I was doing something practical, all right? Funding my sister's six-figure dream while my own turned to ash. Days turned into weeks. My job at the grocery store was grueling. Standing for hours, bagging items, smiling at customers who barely looked at me. By the end of every shift, my back ached and my fingers felt like ice. Still, every paycheck went straight to my parents. Rent, Maddie's books, her monthly Metro pass. There was always something. One night she came into my room unannounced, already scrolling on her phone. "Hey, can I borrow like 100? There's this new anatomy textbook, and I'm going out with my study group Saturday." I was too tired to argue. I just handed her the cash and tried not to cry. That weekend, I spotted a receipt on the kitchen counter. Spa treatment, $180. Charged to Maddie's name. I stared at it for a long time. My sister, the so-called broke student, was treating herself to seaweed wraps while I rationed gas money. The anger was starting to build again. Quiet, controlled. The kind that simmers for a while before it explodes. But the breaking point came a few days later. I was walking home from the grocery store, snow crunching under my boots. when I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. Riley? My heart jumped. Grandpa? It's me, Leo said, warm as ever. Sorry about the new number broke my phone surfing, of all things. I laughed, genuinely laughed, for the first time in weeks. How are you, Grandpa? I should be asking you that. Your mom said you were busy with school. She even told me you were working part-time for experience. I stopped walking. My grip tightened on the phone. One. Actually dropped out, I said slowly. Silence. You what? They asked me to quit, I said, voice shaking. They said Maddie's tuition was more important, that her becoming a dentist would help the family more than psychology ever could. Another long pause. Then came a low, measured voice. Riley, have you ever heard of the education fund your grandmother and I set up for you? What fund? There's an account under your name. I've been depositing money into it every year since you turned 18. It was meant for your college and graduate school. $20,000 each year. I nearly dropped the phone. That can't be right. I've never seen any of it. You didn't have to. Your parents were supposed to manage the disbursement. I assumed they were using it for your tuition. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, cars whizzing by behind me. They lied. They had money. My money. And they used it for Maddie. Riley, Grandpa said, voice sharper now, I need you to listen. That money is legally yours. If they spent it without your consent, that's not just betrayal, it's theft. I leaned against a light pole, shaking. I felt sick. Can you come here, Florida? I'll send the ticket. We'll figure it out together. I don't know, Grandpa. I have work. Forget the job. This is your life we're talking about. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about every shift, every dollar handed over, every dream abandoned. And the worst part? They looked me in the eye, told me it was for the family, and smiled while spending my money behind my back. By dawn, my mind was made up. I left a note on the kitchen table, gone for a few days. Don't call me, R. And I took the first flight out of Ohio. On the plane, I looked out the window as the ground disappeared below me. Somewhere beneath the clouds, the girl who sacrificed everything was still sitting at a checkout line. But I wasn't her anymore, and I wasn't coming back empty-handed. Florida air felt strange at first. It was warm and humid, the kind that stuck to your skin like a reminder that you weren't in Ohio anymore. When I stepped off the plane, the heat wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't ask for, but oddly needed. Grandpa Leo was right there at the gate, holding a paper sign that read, "My favorite girl," in sloppy marker handwriting. I laughed, even through the exhaustion. That man was in his late 70s, but his hug still felt like armor. He looked at me, really looked at me, and frowned. You lost weight. You look tired. Comes with working doubles and losing your future, I muttered. He didn't smile, just nodded and put an arm around me. Come on, let's get home. His house was small, just one story with pale blue shutters and a porch swing that creaked like an old man's laugh. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of quiet that makes you reflect more than you want to. After I showered and ate the scrambled eggs he insisted on making, we sat in his office. It smelled like wood polish and salt air. He pulled out a thick manila folder and slid it across the table. This is it, he said. Everything about the education fund. Statements, transfers, documents, every dollar. You were supposed to have full access. I opened the folder slowly. My hands trembled with every page I flipped through. There it was. 4 years worth of deposits, all in my name, all untouched by me. He sighed deeply. Your grandmother and I set that up when you were little. We wanted both you and Maddie to chase your dreams, no limits. We gave her the same amount. I stared at the figures again. $80,000 in total. Gone. Disappeared like vapor. They told me there wasn't enough, I whispered. They said Maddie needed it more, that my degree wasn't worth investing in. My grandfather's face changed. His jaw tightened. They used your money, Riley. They forced you to drop out, made you work to support her, and spent what was never theirs to touch. My throat was dry. I couldn't respond. He reached for the phone. Wait, I said. What are you doing? Calling Andrew, my lawyer. Is that necessary? He gave me a look I'd seen only once before when Grandma's will was almost contested by a distant cousin who thought he was owed land. Yes, it is. An hour later, Andrew showed up. White-haired, lean, sharp eyes behind silver-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand and got right down to business. I told him everything from the withdrawal to the part-time job, from the hush-hush money to the spa receipts I found around the house. He listened, took notes, barely blinked. When I was done, he leaned back and said, "What they did isn't just unethical, it's illegal. Misappropriation of funds. Possibly fraud, depending on how they access the account. But they're still my parents," I said, voice cracking. He nodded. "Which is why we'll start with a formal conversation. Give them a chance to do the right thing. If they refuse, then we move forward with legal action. Can I think about it?" "Of course," he said, standing. "But time matters. The longer it goes on, the more damage it causes you." After Andrew left, Grandpa sat beside me on the porch swing. The sky had turned orange, the kind of sunset that makes you feel small and hopeful all at once. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said quietly, "but you deserve better than this. You always have." I nodded but didn't speak. My thoughts were loud, a mess of emotions that refused to settle. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I bent over backwards for my family canceling plans, picking up shifts, giving up sleep, handing over money, and for what? So they could throw my future out with last night's takeout and call it a sacrifice? The next morning, I made my choice. We call them today. Grandpa's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes brightened like he was proud. I'd chosen myself. We placed the call on speaker. It rang twice. Then Dad answered. "Leo, what's going on?" "She's here," Grandpa said flatly. "Riley's with me." There was a beat of silence. Thank God. We thought something happened. She left a note. "Yeah, because she had nothing left," Grandpa said, his voice sharpening. "Want to tell me about the money?" More silence. I was just borrowing it. "For Maddie's education," Dad said. "We plan to pay it back." Grandpa's hand clenched the armrest. $80,000, borrowed, without permission. "From your own daughter. It was temporary. You made her drop out. Work retail. Hand over her checks. While you bought new furniture and paid off Maddie's deposit on that luxury apartment." "Dad." "Don't call me that right now," Grandpa snapped. "You lied. You stole. You buried her future to buy someone else's dream." Mom's voice cut in then, calm and cold. "We had to make a choice. Maddie had a better shot. Riley was always the quiet one, the bookworm. She doesn't have the same drive." My breath caught in my throat. Not the same drive? I felt my entire body tense. Grandpa looked at me, his jaw tight. "We'll be in Ohio next week. We'll go over the documents. With a lawyer. You're making this into a circus," Dad said, his voice rising. "It's a family matter." "No," Grandpa said. "It's a theft." "And the family part?" "You broke that when you took her voice away." The call ended in silence. I sat there, staring at the phone, wondering how it had all come to this. But deep down, I knew. They'd been chipping away at me for years, dismissing my dreams, redirecting resources, turning sacrifice into expectation. And I let it happen, because I thought being the quiet one meant being the small one. Not anymore. The air in Ohio hit harder than I remembered. Maybe it was just colder, or maybe I'd changed. 2 weeks after that phone call, Grandpa and I flew back. The snow was starting to melt, but the sidewalks were still slick with ice and salt. I stared out the car window as we drove through my old neighborhood. Everything familiar, but also different. Same houses, same streets. But it didn't feel like home. We parked in front of the house I grew up in. The lights were on. Shadows moved behind the curtains. I hadn't told them we were coming today. Grandpa turned off the ignition and looked over at me. "You ready?" "No," I said honestly. "But I'm going in anyway." He smiled. "That's my girl." Inside, the silence snapped as soon as we walked through the door. "What are you doing here?" Mom's voice came first, sharp and defensive. Dad stood up from the couch slowly. "Riley." "We weren't expecting." "You said we'd talk in person," I interrupted. "We're here to do that." Behind them, Maddie appeared at the top of the stairs in an oversized hoodie, eyeing us like we'd shown up with cameras and microphones. Grandpa didn't waste time. He placed a folder on the coffee table. These are the statements from Riley's trust account. Every dollar that was meant for her, spent without her knowledge. Dad opened his mouth, but Grandpa raised a hand. Don't. I don't want stories. I want facts. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Then Maddie scoffed. Okay, and? It's not like she was using it. Excuse me? I said, staring up at her. You dropped out anyway. You don't even have a plan. I'm actually doing something. The words landed like a slap, but not in the way they used to. They didn't sink in. They didn't hurt. They just made everything clearer. You didn't get where you are on your own, I said quietly. You got there on my back, Mom sighed, stepping forward. Riley, please. You're blowing this out of proportion. Grandpa stood now. No, she's not. You told her she couldn't afford to finish school, while you paid for spa days, car payments, and Maddie's rent. With her money. Dad tried to speak. We were always planning to pay her back. When? I asked. After I hit retirement age? You're being dramatic, Maddie snapped. You're not the only one in this family who matters. No, I said, standing up, but I'm the only one who got erased. Andrew, the lawyer, entered just then, right on time. He walked in, greeted Grandpa with a nod, and took a seat. He opened a folder of his own and began pulling out copies. These documents outline the misuse of funds, he explained calmly. Riley's trust was set up specifically for her education. Using it for anything else, without consent, is legally considered misappropriation. Some might call it embezzlement. Mom's face went pale. This is insane. No, Andrew said. This is justice. You have two choices. Full restitution immediately. Or we proceed with legal action. Legal action? Dad looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under him. You'd sue your own parents? I didn't come here to sue anyone, I said. I came here to get my life back. The room went still. Andrew handed over the agreement repayment in full, plus funds to cover the rest of my graduate studies and relocation expenses. They stared at it like it was a bomb about to go off. Maddie was the first to speak. You're really doing this? Over some stupid degree? I looked at her, not with anger, but clarity. It's not just a degree, it's mine. And so was the money. She rolled her eyes. You act like you're some kind of victim. I was, I said, but not anymore. Eventually, Dad picked up the pen. His hand trembled as he signed. Mom followed, slower, reluctant. Maddie refused to touch it. When it was done, I took a deep breath. There was no applause, no grand ending, just papers, signatures, and a silence that buzzed with finality. As we turned to leave, I glanced back once. I don't hate you, I said, my voice low, but I'm not coming back here again. Outside, the air was sharp, clean. Grandpa opened the car door. How do you feel? Like I buried something, I said. Something that should have died a long time ago. We drove in silence for a while. Then Grandpa reached over and patted my knee. Next stop, freedom. That weekend, I officially re-enrolled in school. Dr. Weber was thrilled to hear from me. She offered to fast-track me into the trauma recovery research project we'd discussed months ago. I always believed in you, she said. Some people are built for healing others. You're one of them. I cried after that call, not out of sadness, but relief, like something inside me had finally loosened. Within weeks, I had moved into a small apartment near campus. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I paid the first month's rent with my money, bought a coffee maker, got a tiny plant named Iris, and for the first time in years, I woke up feeling like my life actually belonged to me. Maddie sent a text one night, no apology, just a message asking for help covering a missed payment. I stared at it for a while, then I deleted it. I didn't even respond, not out of spite, just peace. Let her learn what I had to the hard way. Spring came early that year, or maybe it just felt that way, like life had finally taken its foot off my neck and let me breathe. My little apartment smelled like coffee and books most mornings. The heater clanked like it was protesting every cycle, but I loved that noise. It meant I was somewhere I chose, somewhere that didn't come with guilt or conditional love. Classes restarted with a rhythm that felt oddly familiar. Not easy, never easy, but natural. Dr. Weber brought me onto her research team within weeks. I spent my evenings digging into studies about trauma cycles and emotional resilience, and every page felt like a lifeline. I wasn't just studying people like me. I was becoming someone who could help them. One afternoon, after a long study session, I got a call from Grandpa. "You free tonight?" "I think so." "Why?" "There's a seafood shack by the pier that makes the best clam chowder on the East Coast. I'm flying up for the weekend." I smiled into the phone. "You just miss me." "Of course I do. You're my favorite investment." He showed up the next evening, suitcase in one hand, bag of Florida oranges in the other. Same Leo, same warmth. We sat on the pier that night, plastic bowls of soup balanced on our laps, watching the sunset melt into the lake. "You're really doing it," he said, looking out at the water. "You've taken your life back. I still feel like I'm catching up." "You're not behind," he said. "You just got rerouted. But look where you ended up." I stared at the sky, letting that sink in. A few months passed. Summer crept in quietly. Long days, buzzing air, iced coffee sweating through cups on campus steps. Things were good, not perfect but mine. I picked up part-time hours at the university's Student Health Center, helping undergrads navigate stress, anxiety, and academic burnout. It wasn't therapy yet, but it was a start. One day, a girl named Jess came in. 16, technically too young to be on campus. She was part of a summer program for high schoolers from difficult backgrounds. She sat across from me, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Wouldn't speak at first, wouldn't even make eye contact. But I remembered what silence meant, what it could hide, so I waited. No pressure, no judgment. Eventually, she looked up and said, "I don't know how to be around people who haven't hurt me." That hit me right in the chest. I leaned forward, steady. "You don't have to fix everything right away. Just be here. That's enough." She blinked, then nodded. When she left, I sat in that room for 10 minutes, trying not to cry. It reminded me why I'd fought so hard to come back. Fall came. Leaves crisped and turned gold. I found a rhythm again, something soft and steady. I still miss some things: quiet holidays, the smell of cinnamon bread in Mom's kitchen, but I didn't miss the price I had to pay for them. My family had gone quiet. No dramatic blow-ups. No follow-ups after the settlement. Just a slow, cold retreat. Like they didn't know how to speak to me anymore now that I wasn't bending. Dad lost his job a month after the confrontation. I found out through a mutual friend. Apparently, his absence from work and financial mismanagement caught up with him. Mom took it hard. She was reportedly seeing a therapist now. I hoped that was true. As for Maddie, she wasn't living in that upscale apartment anymore. Word was she moved into a smaller place near campus. Student loans had finally caught up with her. So had the real world. One night, I got a message from her. Just one line. "I didn't know it had gone that far. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond. Not out of hate. Not even anger anymore. Just space. Space I had earned. Space I needed to protect. Because growth wasn't about winning. It wasn't revenge. It was peace. By winter, I had presented at my first academic conference co-authored with Dr. Weber. My part focused on survivor self-perception after betrayal. I spoke from experience, but professionally. Calm, poised. The audience gave me a standing ovation. That night, I walked alone back to my apartment, wind cutting through my coat, cheeks red with cold, but I couldn't stop smiling. I felt like myself again. Or maybe for the first time. On the first day of the new year, Grandpa called. "I've been thinking," he said. Oh. I want to sell the house in Florida." I paused. Why? Too much space. Too many stairs. And, I was thinking maybe I move up here, be closer, maybe buy something small. My heart did a quiet flip. "Are you serious?" He chuckled. "Dead serious. I miss you." And I think this is where I'm supposed to be now. That spring, he moved into a condo 5 minutes from me. Every Sunday, we did breakfast. Eggs, toast, and fresh orange juice, his thing. We built something new. Not perfect, but true. Sometimes, I think about who I was the day I left Ohio that first time. Exhausted, defeated, barely standing. Now, I wake up early, open the windows, sip coffee while the sun rises. I write. I study. I work with real people, people who are rebuilding just like I did. I keep a photo of me and Grandpa on my desk, one from that first Florida visit. I look tired in it, but hopeful. Like I already knew somewhere deep down that things were going to change. And they did, because I changed them. 2 years later, the cherry trees outside my office bloom like they've never known anything but peace. Pink petals drift past my window, soft and aimless, like the universe is finally exhaling. My name's on the glass now, Riley Hart, trauma recovery and counseling. It still feels surreal. Some mornings I stand outside the door just to see it again, not out of pride, out of gratitude. Not everyone gets a second chance to rewrite their own story, but I did, and I wasn't about to waste it. The office isn't big, just a quiet space with warm lighting, a bookshelf that's more emotional survival guide than psychology canon, and a soft green couch where people sit and finally say the things they've held in for years. That couch has heard grief, guilt, rage, hope. It's seen healing happen in real time. Like Jess, now 18, who still visits once a month. She's in college now, studying social work. Said she wants to do what I do, but with her own twist. That girl who once couldn't look anyone in the eye now leads peer support groups on campus. Last week, she brought me a latte and a drawing she made. It was messy, full of color and jagged edges, like her. She handed it to me and said, "This is what your office feels like." I kept it, framed it actually. It hangs behind my desk now. I look at it every day. Sundays are still for Grandpa. He ended up buying a cozy 2-bedroom condo near the lake, close enough for me to walk over after work. He brings me fresh produce from the market, even though I insist I have groceries. "Yeah, but you don't have my tomatoes," he says every time, like it's some secret magic only he knows. He turned 80 this year. We celebrated at his favorite Italian restaurant, the one where the owner calls him boss and sends him home with free cannoli. That night, after dinner, he pulled me aside while the waiter cleared the table. "You've done good, kid," he said, eyes soft. "Your grandma would have been proud." I looked at him, swallowing past the lump in my throat. "I wouldn't be here without you." "Maybe," he said, "but you're the one who climbed out. I just gave you the rope." My parents? Still distant. After the settlement, they stayed quiet for a long time. No calls, no letters, just absence. Then, a few months ago, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Inside, we were wrong. About everything. "We're sorry. If you're ever open to talking, we'd like to try." Signed, Mom and Dad. It wasn't a grand gesture. There was no justification, no strings. Just honesty. I sat with it for a while. Didn't respond right away. I carried it in my bag for weeks, reading it during quiet moments on the bus, at cafes, in between clients. And one day I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I wasn't carrying that weight around like I used to. I'd done the work, lived the hurt, rebuilt the parts of me they couldn't see. And in that space, forgiveness didn't feel like surrender. It felt like freedom. So I wrote back, "Thank you for the letter. I'm not ready for a reunion, but I'm healing. And I hope you are too." I mailed it without fanfare. No dramatic closure, just a step forward on my own terms. Maddie. And I still don't talk much. She's finishing her program now. I heard she's paying her own way, working part-time, taking out loans. From what I've gathered, she's learning what pressure feels like. Last I heard, she started volunteering at a free dental clinic on weekends. That part surprised me. Maybe life has a way of leveling us all out eventually. Maybe we all learn, just on different timelines. One warm evening in early May, I stayed late at the office. I had just finished my last session of the day, a young man trying to forgive himself for staying in a toxic relationship too long. He left lighter than he came in. I sat back at my desk and flipped off the lamp, letting the golden light from the window fill the room. It was quiet, peaceful, and I realized I felt full, not with things, not with noise. Just this quiet, gentle knowing that I had done what I set out to do. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need validation. I had myself, and that was enough. I locked the door, walked downstairs, and stepped into the golden hour. The street smelled like fresh pavement and blooming trees. Across the way, a dad was teaching his kid how to ride a bike, running beside them, arms ready to catch. I smiled, took a deep breath, and walked toward home. That was the thing I'd learned through everything: grief, betrayal, anger, even forgiveness. None of it had to define me. It could live in the past while I lived in the now. So here I am, not perfect, not unscarred, but whole. I've built a life that finally fits me. A life full of meaning, service, and quiet joy. One where I'm no longer someone's second choice. No longer the afterthought in my own story. My name's on the door, my voice is steady, my heart still tender but strong. And that girl who used to sit in the back of the library, trying to disappear, she'd be proud of this version of me. I know I am. Story 2. Boston's winter mornings were chilly from the first light, and the streets were scoured by a brisk breeze at the end of the day. After finishing her final client appointment at the accounting office, Megan Wilson drove to her mother's house with her aging sedan's heater set to maximum. "I apologize, Lily, but Mom is running late again," she added. The phone rang with the happy voice of her 10-year-old daughter. "Mom, it's all right," Grandma said. "She's preparing dinner, but please return home shortly." Megan let out a quiet sigh. Barbara, her mother, seldom ever cooked for her. After hanging up, Lily must have questioned her directly. She looked at the 7 p.m. clock on the dashboard. As tax season draws near, every day Megan's workload grew. Barbara's home was located in a peaceful suburban area. Since her husband's passing 10 years ago, her mother had been living alone in this large home. 3 years earlier, Megan and Lily had moved in together after her divorce and financial troubles. Although it was meant to be a short-term solution, she hadn't been able to support them both while affording her own place, because she was a single mother. There is parking at the entrance. As Megan walked inside, she could hear her mother's voice and the television in the living room. "Is that you, Megan?" Barbara's voice was more affirming than helpful. "Mom just got home, yes." She went into the living room and saw Barbara sitting on the sofa wearing what looked like a fancy robe, as usual. "Lily, where are you?" Megan glanced around. "Doing homework upstairs. Your dinner has been placed in the refrigerator. When you're ready, preheat it." "Thank you." Megan grinned, but her mother's gaze was still on the TV. She was headed to the kitchen. The telephone rang. "Happy!" Barbara exclaimed. "It's Ashley, I see." Megan stopped. Her chest always felt cold when she heard her sister's name. After a crazy time in high school and barely making it to college, Ashley had always been the family favorite. In the end, she had married Jason, a wealthy man, and survived on the life of winter. Indeed, without a doubt. "Come whenever you want. Emma is waking up, I see." "Fantastic." There was warmth and affection in Barbara's voice. While reheating the cold lasagna, she never worked alongside Megan in the kitchen. Megan listened to her mother's conversation. "What's that? Water damage at your house? Oh my! How terrible." "Yes, of course. Stay here. Do you know some people earn over $10,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I do it too, link below if you're curious." "This house is plenty big," Megan frowned. This was the first she'd heard about Ashley's family coming after hanging up. Her mother appeared suddenly energized. "Ashley and her family will be staying for a few days. They have water damage at their house that needs repair." "I see." Megan maintained a calm facade. "How long will they be here?" "I don't know." "A few days until the repairs are done." Barbara shrugged. "Your room will be fine, right? Could you share with Lily?" This was just the beginning. The next day, Ashley arrived with her 8-year-old daughter Emma and husband Jason. Initially planned as just a few days, there were always new reasons to extend their stay. The repairmen are waiting for parts. Additional problems were found. Insurance paperwork is delayed. As days passed, Megan and Lily's living space was gradually encroached upon. "Emma wants to use your bathroom. Could you let her keep her things in there? Jason needs space for a home office. Could you move your desk a bit?" And Megan could never refuse. The house belonged to Barbara, and Megan and Lily were merely temporary residents. Ashley knew this perfectly well. "Are you working on tax strategies for corporate CFOs?" Ashley peered at Megan's accounting papers with a sarcastic smile. "Or applying for single mother welfare benefits?" Megan silently gathered her papers for Lily's sake. She always tried to maintain her composure. After a month, Ashley's true intentions became clear. She complained to their mother daily, whispering criticisms about Megan. "Mom, is Megan still planning to live here?" It's been 3 years already. I'd be too embarrassed to keep imposing on my parents' home. Mom, Megan's room is such a waste. It's so spacious. And they're not even here during the day. We should be using it. Megan felt her relationship with her mother deteriorating daily. Barbara's gaze grew harsher, her words more abrupt. Still, Megan endured. Her savings were steadily increasing, and in a few more months, she would be able to look for their own place. She endured everything for Lily's sake. This tense situation finally reached its breaking point. That day, Megan was particularly exhausted. In the midst of tax season, she had been at the office from 7 a.m. UNT IL 8 p.m., wrestling with complex financial documents for her clients, taxi drivers, and small business owners. The customers she served were ordinary citizens hoping to save a little on their taxes to honor their trust. Megan paid attention to every detail, checking each line carefully. On her way home, she called Lily on her cell phone, usually responding with an energetic voice. Her daughter sounded different today. Lily, Mom's on her way home. Have you eaten dinner? Mom. Lily's voice was tinged with anxiety. Come home right now. What's wrong? Did anything happen? Megan's heart began to race. Yes, but I can't say over the phone. Just hurry home. After hanging up, Megan asked the taxi driver to hurry. When she arrived home, it was already dark with light seeping through the windows. Opening the front door, she heard voices from the living room, her mother and sister's cheerful laughter, along with the television. But Lily was nowhere to be seen. Lily, Megan yelled out. The sound of little footsteps came from above and Lily raced down. Her eyes were red, exhibiting traces of sobbing. Mom. Lily went over and hugged Megan warmly. Look, Lily escorted her mother upstairs. Barbara's house was an old Victorian with 4 bedrooms on the second story. The largest master bedroom was Barbara's, and the second largest was now temporarily inhabited by Ashley's family. Megan and Lily utilized the other 2 rooms, one as Megan's bedroom and home office, the other as Lily's room. When Megan opened the door to her room, there was nothing inside the bed. Desk, bookshelf, dresser. Everything was gone. The little houseplant by the window, the mat on the floor, and the pictures that had been on the walls. Everything was gone. There was nobody in the room. What is it? Megan couldn't speak. The same was true in Lily's room. Megan was astonished in the hallway. Her clothing, school textbooks, dolls, and toys all gone. Behind her, she heard a door open. She turned to see Barbara grinning. She donned a dress usually saved for dinner events on the weekends, and her hair was more carefully done than normal. Megan, oh, you're at home, I said, she said. What's happening on, Mom? Where are our possessions? Megan's voice was shaking as she asked. Barbara's response was mild. Oh, everything was relocated to the yard's doghouse by Jason. We needed the room since tomorrow Ashley's in-laws will be staying. The home for dogs? Megan repeated incredulously. There was a little hut in Barbara's garden that was constructed for her Labrador, who passed away 7 years prior. Since then, the shed has not been used. Because the family of your sister is arriving, the doghouse in the yard is yours to use. There was a coldness in Barbara's voice. I make the decisions here since this is my home. But you made a commitment, Mama. We could live here, you said. For a moment, Megan was unable to conceal her sadness. Megan, 3 years have passed. You're still here too. Do you not believe that it's time for you to reorganize your life? With a mixture of rage and terror, Lily gave Megan's hand a firm squeeze. She saw Barbara go down the steps. Lily and Megan proceeded to the living area downstairs. Ashley reclined elegantly on the couch, sipping a glass of wine and flipping through a magazine. She looked up and grinned as Megan came in. You're running late today, Megan. Work hard. Ashley's tone was clearly mocking. Why did you relocate our belongings, Ashley? Megan's voice trembled, despite her best efforts to be composed. Mom explained, didn't she? My in-laws will be arriving. We require your rooms. Ashley took a drink from her wine. Isn't the doghouse plenty roomy? For a single mother, it seems appropriate. Megan felt the words pierce her chest like a scalpel. Barbara started preparing dinner in the kitchen as if nothing were wrong, but she remained silent. Mom? Megan's thoughts were interrupted by Lily's little voice. Let's head to the backyard to check on our belongings. Their possessions were strewn around the doghouse. The shed itself was roughly 80 feet square, with roof gaps that appeared likely to leak and ancient wooden planks on the walls. The door hung slenderly on old hinges and had no windows. Inside, Lily's little bed was wedged into a corner, and Megan's mattress was set squarely on the floor. Only a short path separated the piled boxes of paperwork and clothing. There was no restroom and no electricity. Our new house is here? Lily stared about in shock. Megan was unable to speak. Years of hardship. The icy attitude from her sister and mother. The humiliation she had suffered. Everything came flooding back. The sorrowful look on Lily's face, however, was what broke her heart the most. "Mom?" Lily's voice abruptly became forceful. "We are no longer required to remain here." Megan had never seen such resolve in her daughter's eyes before. Lily went on, more mature than her 10 years. "We don't live in this house. We are not considered family by Grandma and Aunt Ashley." "But where can we go this evening, Lily?" Megan was confused. "How about giving Aunt Sarah a call?" She had already stated, "Ask for help if you ever need it." Megan's best friend and coworker at work was Sarah. She resided in a large apartment at Lily's recommendation and was unmarried. For the first time, Megan grinned. "You're correct. I'll give Sarah a call." Megan pulled out her phone. Lily started to pack school textbooks and some clothing from the shed. Megan also packed vital papers and necessary clothing in a luggage. Without hesitation, Sarah said, "Come now." She pulled up in her automobile in front of Barbara's house. Half an hour later, Megan and Lily departed with just a few bags. Neither Barbara nor Ashley tried to stop them. "I'm sure you'll be back soon," Ashley remarked coldly from the sofa without rising. "You have nowhere else to go." Megan turned around and glanced at her sister and mother. Then she made up her mind. She would never return to this house. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Ashley. I suppose someday you'll regret what you've done today." Getting into Sarah's vehicle, Lily stared back at the home one final time through the window. "Mom, we're gonna be okay, right?" Megan clasped her daughter's hand firmly. "Yes, we'll be okay. We have our own route to follow." As the automobile drove away, Barbara's house got smaller in the distance. Megan felt rage and anguish in her heart, but an even stronger determination. Sarah's flat was on the 4th level of an old brick building downtown. Though not enormous, it was tidy, with large windows facing trees in the park. That first night, Megan hardly slept on the sofa. Lily was asleep in Sarah's spare bedroom, but Megan had to face the harsh reality. "Are you truly okay?" Sarah entered in the living room with 2 coffee cups as dawn light poured through the drapes. "Looks like you scarcely slept last night." Megan received the cup with a wry smile. "Thank you, Sarah. This truly helps. Don't worry about it. I was growing weary of living alone anyhow." Sarah sat down next to her and asked, "So what's your plan now?" Megan took a big breath. "First, I need to find an apartment. I have enough savings for a down payment and the first few months' rent." "There's no urgency," Sarah responded, but Megan was resolute. "Thank you, but this is something I need to accomplish myself." From that day, Megan's new life began. She woke up early, took Lily to school, then went to the office. In the evening, she picked Lily up at Sarah's apartment, and at night she searched for apartments online and checked properties on weekends. They visited sites in person. "Mom, this place is small." Lily said they were looking at an old flat in Brighton, with just 1 bedroom and a living room. "Yes," Megan answered while looking at the small courtyard visible from the window. "But the rent is affordable and it's not too far from your school." "I don't mind if it's small." Lily squeezed Megan's hand. "It's much better than going back to Grandma's house." At those words, tears welled up in Megan's eyes. Many times, she had almost given up, but her daughter's strength sustained her. 2 weeks later, Megan signed a lease. They had almost no furniture and spent the first night sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Still, they now had a place of their own. "Looks like my workspace will be the kitchen table," Megan laughed. "An old wooden table and chairs. Were there only furniture? I'll do my homework on the bed." Lily responded with a smile. Gradually, the rhythm of their new life took shape. Megan took on more clients to achieve financial stability as quickly as possible. She worked late into the night and spent weekends working too. "Megan, Aren't you pushing yourself too hard? Sarah asked with concern at the office. You look pale. This past month. I'm fine, Megan answered, rubbing her tired eyes. I just need to keep going for now. In fact, her efforts were paying off. Edward Clark, the boss at the accounting firm, had noticed Megan's work ethic. She was surprised when he suddenly appeared at her desk. Miss Wilson, do you have a moment in his office? Edward made an unexpected proposal. Thompson Industries is looking for a new accounting manager. They're a mid-sized company, but growing rapidly. Their CEO is an old friend of mine, and he asked me to recommend someone trustworthy. Megan caught her breath. Thompson Industries had a good reputation locally. You could meet their expectations. Edward smiled. And of course, the salary would be much better than what you're making now. That evening, Megan shared the good news with Lily. I might have a chance at a new job. The interview hasn't happened yet, but if I get hired, Mom, you'll definitely get it. Lily threw her arms around her mother's neck. You work harder than anyone. The interview was stressful, but Megan's abilities and enthusiasm came through. A week later, she received an offer from Thompson Industries. The salary was 5 times her previous one, with an excellent bonus structure. I'll take it, Megan answered without hesitation. The new job was busy, but fulfilling. Megan's talents flourished, and her reputation at the company gradually grew with her increased income. Life slowly became more comfortable. A sofa, television, bookshelf. Step by step, their small apartment began to feel like a home. Mom, look. One day, Lily came running home from school. Showing her a test paper, she had scored 100% on a math test. That's wonderful. Megan hugged her daughter. Mr. Daniels said I might be able to compete in the math Olympiad. Lily had adapted to her new school and was making more friends. Above important, her academic achievement had improved considerably. Previously, amid the tight environment of Barbara's house, she had tended to be reclusive. Now she was vivacious and confident. Megan was the same. Freed from the confines of her relationship with her mother and sister, she was finally expressing her genuine skills at work. Her recommendations were consistently embraced, and she even received direct gratitude from the CEO. We're incredibly delighted you came on board, CEO John Thompson stated. Our company's financial condition has become clearer, and we can now see a road forward. About 9 months after starting their new life, Megan made a significant decision. Lily, I want to chat to you about something. She sat opposite her daughter after supper. I'm thinking about buying a house. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Our own house? Yes. It's still little, but it has a yard and a room particularly for you. It was a modest ranch house they discovered in the suburbs, approximately 30 years old and needed some repairs, but it featured a living room filled with pleasant sunlight and an ancient apple tree in the garden. When can we move in? Lily leaped with delight. Next month, if the loan is authorized. Megan responded with a smile that night. Lying in bed, Megan pondered on the last year, a reality she couldn't have anticipated. The night she left her mother's house was suddenly unfolding before her. There had been rough days, but Lily and she had conquered them and grown stronger. She no longer needed to depend on her mother or sister. She wouldn't even need to contact them when leaving the flat. Megan and Lily were establishing a new life by themselves. On a beautiful Sunday morning, 3 months after moving into their new house, Megan was enjoying breakfast with Lily beneath the apple tree in the backyard. The mellow May sunshine seeped through the foliage, lighting their table. Mom, what are we doing today? Lily questioned, raising a pancake to her mouth. Well, how about going to the home improvement store this afternoon to look at wallpaper for your room? Megan grinned. Lily's face lighted up. Do you suppose they'll have Star Wars patterns? Let's find out. The serene morning air was disrupted by Megan's mobile phone ringing. Looking at the screen, she saw Mom depicted. There had been no touch from Barbara since they had left the residence. For a second, Megan wondered whether to respond, but believing her mother wouldn't call unless it was something important, she pressed the button. Hello? Megan. Barbara's voice was the weakest Megan had ever heard. I need your aid. Megan felt her spine stiffen. What's happened? It's Emma. She's terribly unwell. Her kidneys. Barbara's voice cracked with tears. There's a severe problem. Megan rose up and walked slightly away from Lily to continue the chat. Slow down, Mom. What's wrong with Emma's kidneys? Acute renal failure, Barbara stated with a shaky voice. She needs an urgent transplant. We've all been tested, but... And Megan prompted. You're the only match. Megan couldn't speak. The recollection of that night a year ago, when she and Lily had been banished to the doghouse, came vividly back. Ashley sneers her mother's apathy. Those memories swirled throughout her. Come see me, Barbara continued. Please, Megan, if only for my sake. After hanging up, Megan couldn't move for a while. Lily approached with worry. Mom, are you okay? Who was that? It was Granny. Megan responded quietly. Emma is unwell and in the hospital. Lily's expression clouded. Emma? Is she going to survive? It is a renal condition. Megan took a seat again. She may be compatible with my kidney. Lily took her mother's hand in silence. How will you respond? Megan inhaled deeply. To be honest, I'm not sure. The remainder of the day. Megan fought inside herself. Emma was 8 years old at the time. Megan couldn't see Ashley suffer even if she was her daughter. However, she became angry as she thought about such degrading treatment. Lily, I'm considering coming to Grandma's place tomorrow after you get off from school. During dinner, Megan made her decision public. I will also be attending, Lily said right away. However, school. It's a half day tomorrow. Keep in mind that today is a teacher conference day. Megan grinned. Yes, exactly. Let's leave together after that. They were in front of Barbara's house the next day. The door was opened by Barbara herself. She appeared much older than she had a year before. Her face was characterized by extreme weariness, and her hair was unkempt. Megan. Lily. Barbara's eyes filled with tears. You arrived. As they stepped inside the living room, the opulent space seemed a little run down. The identical furniture appeared to have been ill-maintained. Clothes and blankets littered the couch. On the coffee table was a cup that was empty. Ashley, where are you? Quietly, Megan inquired. At the medical facility. Barbara fell onto one of the chairs. She is unable to abandon Emma. Could you elaborate on the circumstances? Barbara's gaze dropped. Emma suddenly got a high fever 3 weeks ago. We initially believed it to be a simple cold, but it persisted. A congenital kidney problem has gotten worse, according to tests. Is it congenital? Megan scowled. You were previously aware of this? Ashley didn't take it seriously, even though it seemed like she knew. The tone of Barbara's speech was unusually critical. She did not even take her to the doctor on a regular basis. They heard the front door open at that very moment. Ashley entered, but the attractive woman was nowhere to be seen. Megan, the sister, recalled. She had messy hair, a bad complexion, and big black bags under her eyes. She halted upon seeing Lily and Megan. You arrived. Ashley's voice sounded raspy. Megan got to her feet. What's up with Emma? We're running out of time, but she's steady. Ashley fell onto one of the chairs. Jason and I have parted ways. He doesn't care about Emma's health. He only wants his companionship. Megan was taken aback, divided. When did it start? It was 4 months ago. Ashley sounded empty. Jason took our house away from us. Has been accruing debt surreptitiously. Megan became aware of the reality at that moment. Ashley's family had really lost their home to foreclosure when they arrived at her mother's house a year earlier to claim water damage. Your house didn't sustain any water damage, did it? Megan spoke softly. Ashley raised her head and gave Megan a weary look. I apologize for lying. My pride. Her speech was stuttering. Barbara said nothing. She was also a different individual. She donned plain clothing in place of her expensive gowns and flawless cosmetics. You were also unaware. Mom? Barbara was questioned by Megan. Until lately, no. Barbara let out a long sigh. Ashley used all of my funds to settle her obligations. There was a thick quiet in the room. Megan turned her gaze to the window. The place where she and Lily had departed that evening was visible to her. She was filled with despair and rage at the time, but now she felt oddly at ease. Is my kidney a match for Emma? Really? She went back to the subject. Ashley gave a nod. Thank you, only to listen. Megan inhaled deeply. I have health issues. Anything? Ashley responded right away. I'll take any action first. Get rid of this residence, Megan said in a soothing tone. Make use of the money to settle debts and save for Emma's medical care and Mom's retirement. Barbara was about to speak, but she remained silent. Megan went on. You have to work, Ashley. Acquire the ability to live alone. Ashley gave a nod. I've already begun working part-time at a grocery store. There was no longer any arrogance in her voice. Ultimately, Megan touched Lily's shoulder. Recognize what a true family is. Family is more than simply biological ties. It has to do with relationships in which we value and encourage one another. Barbara's eyes filled with tears. You were always the strongest mother, Megan. Lily's voice came out of nowhere. I'd want to see Emma. Megan grinned a little as she glanced at her daughter. Indeed. Let's get to the medical facility. She still had conflicting emotions for Ashley and her mother. She was unsure if she would ever be able to forgive them completely. Megan, however, had to make a decision. It was a decision to go past animosity and establish a new bond. I'm going to donate to Emma, Megan said plainly. She hasn't done anything improper. She's only a kid. Ashley broke down in tears and grasped Megan's hands. Thank you. Thank you. She left the house with her dignity totally crushed. Megan glanced at her sister and mother. Although we can't go back in time, we can begin a new connection. She then went to the hospital while holding Lily's hand. A year ago, Megan had remarked, "Someday you'll regret what you've done." Ironically, her words had become truth, albeit in a different way than she had envisaged. 6 months after the operation, on an autumn day, Megan was preparing a BBQ in the garden of her home. Red apples hung heavy on the tree, and children's laughter reverberated around the garden. Mom, I'm carrying beverages to Emma. Lily picked up 2 glasses of lemonade with ice under the shade of the tree. Emma was creating a vivid image. The procedure had been successful, and she was healing well. Her profile reminded Megan of the young Ashley, but her eyes had the same warmth Megan recalled from her own youth. Megan, may I help? Barbara came out from the kitchen. She now spent every weekend at her daughter's residence. Barbara's house had been sold, and she had started living alone in a modest apartment. Thank you, Mom, Megan grinned. Could you fix the salad? Her bond with Barbara was restorative. Gradually, it wasn't ideal, but a new connection was forming. She no longer looked down on Megan, but rather viewed her with respect. Ashley's coming soon, right? Barbara asked. Indeed. As soon as she finishes work. Ashley had started working as a receptionist at the local community college. At the same time, she was attending evening classes in accounting. Her divorce from Jason was official, and she was learning to live on her own power for the first time. Hello, everyone. A voice called from the entryway. Ashley showed up with a paper bag. I brought cake. Oh, thank you, Megan agreed. The most striking change was that of Ashley. In both her words and deeds, her previous haughtiness had vanished, to be replaced with humility and thankfulness. Emma had learned a valuable lesson from the family problems and her sickness. Emma came sprinting over. Mom, you see, I sketched Aunt Megan. Ashley's daughter's drawing made her smile. It featured a woman holding Emma and Megan and reaching out to Emma. It's an exquisite image. Ashley gave her daughter a hug. Aunt Megan is a unique individual. Megan studied the sight in silence. At work, her life had taken a surprising turn. She was now in a position with more responsibility. Lily was honing her skills after being chosen for a special math program at school. The family that had once heard her at dinner was now developing a new relationship with her. Barbara lifted her glass silently. I appreciate your bravery and kindness, Megan. We were mistaken. All of us have matured, Megan answered coolly. Although she hadn't fully forgiven, she had found serenity in letting go of her resentment. Megan walked out to the backyard beneath the stars. That night, after putting Lily to bed, she inhaled deeply. Unpredictability is a part of life. She endured humiliation and had her possessions placed into a doghouse a year and a half ago. However, she was now more resilient, astute, and sympathetic. Mom! She stuck her head out the window, Lily. Tomorrow, is it okay if I take Emma to the park? Megan grinned. Naturally, they had all gone through challenging times and discovered the true meaning of family. The heart that respects and supports one another is more significant than blood ties.